let's get started with this next session. So for those of you who have been here before, you might recognize this format. This is a series we have called Founder Stories, where we actually sit down with founders from the local Kansas City startup market, talk to them about their entrepreneurial journeys, from as far back as when entrepreneurship might have been, something they were thinking about as kids or something that came out of their early days, talk about them founding their companies and so on. And we haven't done one of these in a little while, and I'm excited about our guest tonight because for a couple of reasons, and we'll get into it a little bit when we talk. And I'm going to go ahead and just quickly introduce our guest, and then we'll jump right into it. Learie Hercules is the founder and CEO of Heft IQ. I met Herc. You go by Herc?
Yeah.
I met Herc through a mutual friend that we have, Davion Ross. We were introduced via email and didn't get a chance to know him until we kind of went through the Launch KC process and have since had an opportunity to talk to him a few times. And I'm excited about his story. I'm excited about the company that he's building. I'm super excited that he's doing it here in Kansas City because, as you'll hear, he's got a background that spans, it's a global background, but it certainly spans coast to coast from an entrepreneurial perspective here in the United States. And it's exciting to have him here in Kansas City and exciting to doing the stuff he's doing. So, Herc, thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming up here and agreeing to talk to me a little bit. So I want to start with, your story. And I find it funny that we're in a Kansas City, we're in a city of, a region of 2.3.5 million people. And I was in my head trying to figure out, what are the odds that there are two high growth, venture back entrepreneurs from the same Caribbean country, the same little tiny island here in Kansas City. So you and Davion Ross share the same same home location, same home country, don't you? Right? Is that right?
Yeah. So Trinidad and Tobago, and I moved to the U.S. in 2001.
Okay. What brought you to the United States?
I met my mom worked in research and development in Telecom. I met her boss when I was 14 years old. He challenged Einstein's theory of relativity. He was in magazines. I asked him, could you do that? You're from an island. He's like, yeah, you can do all this global stuff. I'm like, all right, bet. And that sparked me increasing the expectation level of myself. And then I came to work in Telecom, did switching, transmission, designed a mobile network, optimization, all that good stuff. 3G, US was on 2G. And we went to Richardson, Texas on training in 98. And I realized that we were better engineers than the telecom engineers in the US. And even at the Nortel Networks. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I'll be back.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll take this talent to a bigger market.
Yeah, I'll be back. And I interviewed, got promoted on the phone interviews and stuff. And just because coming from a small ecosystem, you tend to do everything versus specialize in a big market.
Sure.
So I knew the switching, transmission, the radio frequency engineering, all the stuff. And so I got promoted several times on the phone interview. Took one job consulting, designing and optimizing networks for all the Lucent, Alcatel, Ericsson, Sprint, AT&T, Verizons of the world. And that was fun because working for a consultancy gave me the opportunity to travel to a market, spend 2 years, build out the network, get to know the people, get to know the culture, and work on different types of telecom technology as well. And I think that benefited in me being comfortable culturally, being different, because every market I went to, the people were different, despite them thinking they're American and it's the same.
Yeah,
right?
I know. Big country.
Yeah, so
it's a United States.
Yeah,
all the states are different.
Yeah, so that helped me from an identity perspective, lean into who I am, where I'm from as well, be comfortable navigating different spaces and being comfortable as anyone else.
So let's talk about, Herc as a kid. So parents were into technology. Your mom was a researcher. So technology was something as a kid you were exposed to early on. And tell me a little bit about, Herc as a kid, growing up.
I had to ask my mom, my elementary school teachers a couple of years ago to find out, right? Because I don't want to really find out. But apparently, I read a lot. I asked one of my teachers, how was I as a 6-year-old kid? She's like, oh, when the class is giving problems, I'll just put you in a corner with a book. I'm like, oh no. so, so, so apparently I was always a reader, very curious. I would be pissed when my aunt buy a book for Christmas. I'm like, is this a present? Right. But I'm very curious. When I went to middle school, I asked my mom for a Collier's encyclopedia, and we had siesta on Sundays. Everyone goes to sleep on the island. You can walk in the house and take a TV, right? But I wait for everyone to go to sleep, and I'd go read the encyclopedias and just hours just going from book to book.
You always get the red encyclopedia.
Yeah, for fun.
Yeah. All right. That says a lot.
And then I would collect anything that is broken around the house, put it in a box, 2 boxes under the bed, and I do all my chores. 5 a.m. I'm up doing all the chores, the backyard stuff, and then I pull the 2 boxes out. So that means this is my time. Don't call me about chores. And I just build stuff.
Now, were your parents both career people?
Yeah.
Were you around any entrepreneurs or, like any people that were, running their own businesses and doing that? And it seems like that's Ireland culture. There's a lot of, everybody, like you said, everybody's doing everything.
Yeah.
So what was your exposure to running a business as a child?
I remember when we were 11 years old, we moved into this new community. And my dad was like, okay, there's no soccer fields, there's lack of facilities. He formed a community council in our house. So people come to our house every week. And then he'd have committee meetings, book on how to take minutes. He's like, okay, you take the minutes. I'm like, okay. So you just do what your parents tell you, right? So I take minutes in the meetings, see how to conduct the meetings. And then when I was 13, he said, you need to form a youth group. I'm like, all right. So I formed a youth group. We start doing big sales things and going on trips. And then I'm like, okay, how do I get out of this? Oh, coach the other people who have leadership skills. So I started coaching other people to take over. And then he's like, okay, go do this. I do that, take over. And I'm like, let me open a shop. So then I started opening a shop, going buying stuff on Saturdays, taking inventories, me and my sister. And, it's just I was very just curious about trying things. I learned plumbing, I learned carpentry. I'm like, I need a bookshelf. I go to the hardware, build that stuff. So I was very curious, and I was willing to, and I'm still willing to try anything.
Yeah. So that curiosity and like picking up those roles and doing those things, did you ever like do the calculus of this is a job or this is a business, or was it just more the task in front of you, the thing you were asked to do, the thing you were doing, the thing you were learning about at the time?
No, I wanted to become a medical doctor like all my friends in high schools. I went to the best high school in the country. And, out of a class of 32, there are probably 28 doctors.
Wow. All right.
So that's the thing. I was like, yeah, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a doctor. Right. But I think they knew before I knew, because we'd have projects in school and I'd come with some crazy things. Right. And, and I just ended up going towards engineering, electrical engineering. And then I got a thought like, I think the telecom network is going to be run by like computers. So then I went to do computer science, a double major with management with a minor in HR because I love people through my dad. And then I did a master's in computer science. But I was always a builder at heart. And I don't care if we're building a bookshelf or wiring the building, or I don't care what it is, even today. When I came to America, when you live in an island, you don't move much, right? There's the extended family thing. When I came to America, people were like, yeah, I need to move. I'm packing a U-Haul. I was like, packing it? So I was like, okay, I'll come help. And then after a couple of times moving friends, first like, you volunteering to move?
Yeah. You're the nice guy.
Oh, right. So I was always, it's just an island thing, right? So I'm always like in something. I'm doing this. Okay, I want to see how you do that. Show me this thing. And I'm still like that.
Okay.
Right. And so entrepreneurship wasn't a thing that I initially like set out to do. I set out to become one of the best engineers on the planet. Right. Came to the US. I designed the first 4G network. I took all the vendor documentation. I read through all that stuff. I discovered I can speed read. When I was 9 years old, I had 2 older sisters. And if you know about Danielle Steele and all the romantic novel stuff, and they would always hide the books under their mattress. right?
And you sped read Danielle Steele.
Yeah, so at 9 years old, I'm like, why the hide this thing under the mattress? Wasn't that right? So I just wait till everyone is hanging out on the patio and chilling, and then I'll just let me go to the bathroom, I just sneak out and go under the bed, speed read it, and put it back. So like after a few years of that, like I can just consume a lot of stuff and retain it too, right? So I read a lot.
Were you ever asking them when they were going to get the next one?
Oh,
like, when are you going to be doing?
I'd go to the neighbors. D.H. Lawrence is a big author in Europe. I read that 10 years old. Lady Chatterley's Lover. I've read thousands. And then even as an adult, I was reading 2 books a week. And then I'm like, okay, let me kind of slow down and build some other things. But even today, at any point in time, I have probably 4 books I'm reading at any point in time. And now I do a lot of micro-learning. And then if you check out ARVIX, it's a research website. And a lot of the revolutions around AI is there. So I read a few research papers every day to understand how researchers are thinking about prompting and LLMs and stuff. And then I build a bunch of POCs on that and then understand the capability and then build to that.
Mm-hmm. Put this in context for me, Herc. Speed reading. I mean, I understand the concept. I consider myself a pretty fast reader. I can, consume a book in a pretty decent amount of time. What's speed reading in your context? Like, have you figured out how fast you can consume, how many pages or anything like that? No, just a couple books a week kind of speed read, and that's probably at a leisurely pace for you.
Dry reading, dry reading. I don't like fiction. I stopped reading fiction at like age 15.
Yeah,
and for our English exams, we had to write a creative story. And at the end of writing that during the exam, I started laughing so hard. I was like, man, this is poop, right? And I was struggling with creative writing.
Okay.
And then when I graduated from high school, I went back to get a letter of recommendation. And the principal wrote, he's always interested in the intricacies of the Middle East. I'm like, why you write that as a job I'm going for? You know what I mean? But I guess that is who I was. And I like dry reading, like academic papers, things of that nature. And so like I have an AI patent I filed in 2015, right? Issued in 2017, but I think I read leisurely, these things are leisurely, not to retain. And then somehow my brain just connect things and come up with things.
Sure. Yeah, that's what a great competitive advantage that is, to be able to consume dry content as a passion.
Yeah.
A leisurely thing to do. Yeah. Most of us struggle with that, or that's we are forced to do. I gotta read this. Like, I gotta try to learn this too. Like, that's why.
No, I've studied cognitive psychology, right? And some neuroscience, and I studied vision on the eye, the construction, how humans perceive objective reality. Light hits an object, hits your retina, inverted, drops it on the optic nerve. And I'm like, this is crazy, like human body, right? And then the LLMs came up. They're like, oh, context window. I'm like, oh, so if I ask someone, what was I wearing yesterday? Some people don't remember because there's something called an attention mechanism in LLMs. You didn't pay attention to this specific thing. Same thing with artists. Artists are so specific in attention, noticing things, that they're able to draw things. And so I started putting together the construction of a neural network in the LLM is modeled after the mind, and the mind is modeled the same way. It's like there's context window, we call that memory. How much could you remember within a specific context? You pay attention to certain things. So we have the ability to go back with the same data and reconstruct a reality and come forward with it. And it's the same thing the LLMs are doing. So now it kind of made me understand how we could actually use LLMs in specific ways that a lot of people don't know, even the people who are creating the foundational models.
All right. So for someone who doesn't know what an LLM is, tell me in layman's terms, like, what's an LLM?
So it's a large language model.
Okay.
Right. So it's a neural network that is fed with a lot of data. So there's data sets that contain the entire internet and other data sources. They feed it into this neural network. There's some back propagation things that happens. And then now this model, develops a reasoning ability across all the data sets, is able to see a lot of patterns that most humans can't see. So a lot of pattern recognition are deep layers, which is how our mind works, right? And our mind works in that way for many reasons. I'll give you an example of what is term hallucination that I see as a feature, right? As a kid, your parent may say, hey, you can be a doctor. Look at this person. They look just like you. And they're a doctor. Like, oh, wow. Okay, yeah, I can be a doctor. So now you've just projected an image into the kid's brain, used the powers of association. Oh, they're a male or woman, and they look just like me. And, oh, I start formulating and the kids start formulating in their minds, I can do that. And I see it. And so that construction now drives their daily behaviors and sometimes their path in life. And it's the same thing with an LLM, the ability to generate construction or perception is a superpower if used in the correct way, right? So if I say, okay, what temperature, how hot do you think it was yesterday? You may call a figure, but you just hallucinated because you don't know. So we do it all the time, right? And so sometimes we get caught up in a lot of the writers and the journalists and all that stuff, but I would say focus on the science of the mind, neural network, psychology, and related to a large language model and the reasoning ability across. They're doing benchmark Google LLM evaluation. They benchmark LLMs across a number of different domains. They benchmark it doing LSAT, etc. And just take a look at the reasoning ability of an LLM, which is, if you want to say, like the CPU of today, right? So don't get consumed too much with the CPU. Think about the capabilities it allows you and what you could actually build with it, with the capability.
Breaking it down. It's fantastic. You said something a minute ago I want to go back to. So your mom, what kind of research did your mom?
She worked research and development. So they did a lot of the telephone, rotary type, then the pulse type.
Okay.
And then the wireless cordless phones at home.
Okay. So technology R&D.
Yeah, technology R&D, yeah.
So not an academic research.
No, like in the Caribbean, the girls outperform the boys in STEM. And I think primarily because there's boys' schools and girls' schools. And like for me, my experience, when you're in a boys' school, you while all the way out because there's no girls to impress and you're not as easily distracted, right? So, and so what happens is, even at the girls' school, they're competing with each other in STEM, right? And so there's not the psychological thing that occurs here with the co-ed schools, right? The first time I sat next to a girl was in my first semester in college. And I was like, oh my God, I can't even focus. I was like, can I borrow your notes? Like, what the? I had to sort out myself real quickly. And some weeks I was like, what's this?
My LLM is
Yeah.
Yes. That's funny. And true. I think, I mean, my experience, and I think if you look at history, I think females have been outperforming males in STEM forever. It's just we haven't encouraged them in that path.
Yes.
Socially.
Yes.
And so that's interesting that's been the experience. Now, what I wanted to go back to though, so that's maybe where the technology part of you comes from, but you said the HR thing, and then you said your dad and people. What was your dad's role?
So my dad worked in the communication department in the same telecom company.
Okay.
So he was always good with people.
All right.
So he knew everyone. So people would be like, hey, Mr. Hercules, I'm looking for a job. Okay, put on a nice shirt tomorrow and then come back, I have a job. He knew everyone.
Okay.
And I think I got that from him as well. He's very social and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, give it up for his dad.
Yeah. So,
give it a little bark.
Yeah. So I have like the combination of the two.
Okay. That's a great combo.
Yeah.
That works really well. All right. So now I want to, all right. So you realized when you went to Richardson, Texas, that you should go to a bigger market and take those skills that you've got to a bigger market. But you landed in New York City. Was it New York City?
Yeah.
Or was it? Okay.
Yes.
What was that like?
Cultural shock. I didn't realize, like, we have a running joke in the Caribbean, like, if you go to China, how do you differentiate between one person and the next? There's 2 billion people. And when I got to New York, went out Friday, like, yeah, we'll see you next week. And next I was like, oh my God, I don't know who I met. It's like blonde hair, blue eyes, I can tell. So that was a cultural shock, right? And then I'm like, okay, there's a lot of people concentrated in one place. And then the concept of living in a building, that freaked me out for a few months.
Okay.
So I lived actually in Connecticut and commuted into New York.
Yeah, because living in Manhattan was too much.
In a building. In Kirby, you don't live in buildings.
Right.
So I was like freaked out, like in a concrete building. So that took me a while to get over. But for me, it was still fun because I was experiencing a different culture. And, I kept pushing myself. We speak very softly in the island because there's 1 million people. People don't know your business. In New York, it's like, oh, this is good. So I had to learn to speak slower and louder.
That's funny because New York, I think, is an anomaly in many ways.
Yeah.
New York is the extreme.
Instead if you could make it in New York, you could make it anywhere.
That's the song, right? Yeah, the man says it. But you then jumped to another extreme. You went coast to coast, right?
Yeah.
So you went from New York to...
I went from New York to Orlando, which I thought was Disney Park. I didn't know it was a city. So I designed
it's a city built around a Disney park. Yeah, that's fair.
So I got there, designed Sprint 3G network and stuff. I'm like, okay, experienced my first hurricane in Orlando.
Fun.
I called my mom. Hey, mom, we have a hurricane next 50 minutes. Okay, so
that's right, because in Trinidad and Tobago, there's no hurricanes.
No, it misses us.
Yeah.
So I said, Mom, hurricane. She's like, okay, how are you doing otherwise? Mom, it's a hurricane. She don't know what that is. So first hurricane, and from Orlando, I went to Philadelphia.
Okay.
Cricket Wireless, and then went to Atlanta, Philly a couple times. I did positive train control, controlling the trains in Sector Philadelphia and Metro North Transit. Cell towers use GPS for timing of handoffs with the phones. And then I had to design a system for timing underground in Grand Central Station where there's no GPS signal and satellite. So I had to do network timing, protocols, like deep tech stuff. And we got everything working, invited the railroads, and I was like, okay, I'm out of fun stuff to do. Let me go to Silicon Valley.
All right. Now, what took you to Silicon Valley? Was it just the curiosity of hearing about it and wanting to go? Or was there a pull? Was there a job? Was there a...
So at the time, I started dating this girl in Philadelphia.
Let's see, here it is. Sat next to the... Yeah. All it took was sit next to one.
She moved there. We did long distance. And then and then the cloud came out, 2009. Amazon started building out their cloud. The iPhone market started. One guy wrote an app, $99, got 1 million downloads. I was like, listen, to my boss, listen, this cloud is going to be big. He's like, no, I would put something in the cloud. I'm like, okay. And next day, I gave him my 2 weeks notice. Gave the apartment complex 2 weeks notice. And I was like, yep, I'll be in San Francisco. And I was out.
Where'd you land in San Francisco? Like, where was where'd you live in San Francisco?
Pacific Heights.
Okay. So you were in...
2 blocks down from Daniel Steele.
You were in the city.
2 blocks down from Daniel Steele.
That's too much.
She owned, I took a picture. I sent to my sister, this is where all your money is.
Yeah, that's funny. All right. That's...
And I landed there without a job because I resigned. I landed, that's how I came to America too. I walked my mom and brother to the bank, signed over everything, and left with nothing. I said, okay, I saw tornadoes and stuff in America, and people say, oh, we're going to make it again. I'm like, okay, let me test myself. Let me come in nothing and see, right?
So I've done that twice too. And I mean, it's the ultimate, going to make the jump, right?
Right.
You got no livelihood, no income.
Yeah.
You're making the jump.
Yeah. And then moving to San Francisco without a job, I had some savings because I came from a savings culture. And I'm like, okay. And I start going around to these meetups, meeting people, learning the tech. And then couldn't get a job for like 6 months. The first 6 months.
Really?
Yeah. I kept taking things out of my resume.
What year was this? Like what time frame was this?
2011.
Okay. So post bubble burst.
Yeah. 2011. I couldn't get a job. I had to take things on my resume continually. I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
Well, all right.
It's very like cliquish, and you need to know people, put you on kind of thing.
For sure.
And then they look at my resume and they're like, you did all this stuff? Like, I'm like, okay. So first 6 months, I moved in July 4th, celebration. And then December, I went home to Trinidad, came back in January. I was like, man, why am I looking for a job? I was literally running the company before in Philadelphia, and I started my first company,
Okay.
right? Which started off boosting signals in buildings, right? We'd come in, do a survey. Okay, there's a bunch of dead spots. T-Mobile, Verizon. We'll design a network of antennas, pull a signal in, boost it with an amplifier system. So we do that for commercial buildings, hotels, etc. But that type of business doesn't really scale well. Or I had a team of installers to do the stuff. I would do all the engineering, designs, and all that stuff, but didn't scale well. And another thing was the sales cycle. One hotel said, "Yeah, we'll put in the budget for next year." I'm like, damn, I need to eat, right? So I'm like, okay. And then one day a hotel came and after a month and said, "Hey, let's sign." And I said, "Sign, of course. Why the rush? Oh, we got a bad review on TripAdvisor." I'm like, okay. And when the TripAdvisor took a screenshot, I was like, okay, pivoting the company, we're going to build a crowdsource app that uses the RF, the library in the phone. We're going to measure the signal in the building. We're going to build a location system to tell you where you are in the building, X, Y, and Z, not just lat and long. And we're going to crowdsource all of the signal strength and the quality, sell it back to the carriers and the companies like us who need to figure out where the dead spots are.
That was your first company.
First company.
How many companies have you now started?
1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Shit.
This is
So I have 2 companies
going right now. Okay. All right. We'll get to that. So how long were you in Silicon Valley?
7 years.
And then did you go from Silicon Valley to the Midwest at that point, or?
Yes.
Okay. What brought you here?
Yeah. So I worked, after my first company, Activia Technologies, went to AT&T Big Data, work on data at scale, billion record data, query, sub-second, all that good stuff, AI stuff, products. A recruiter reached out from Minneapolis and said, "Hey, there's a company, they make devices for traffic lights. They try to orchestrate traffic lights." And I just hosted a smart city hackathon at AT&T. So I'd host these hackathons every quarter and then take part in it. And I was like, I'm not sure they understand what space they're in. So then she set up the interview and I asked them question for the first 15 minutes. And then they're like, "Oh, we need this guy." And then, negotiation. But they were a company that came out of 3M, right? Minneapolis is very good at embedded devices. So if you think about heart monitors, all that embedded stuff, the talent is in Minneapolis. And so they came out of 3M with a device in the fire trucks. When the siren turns on, it sends an infrared, turn the light green, and then transit buses similarly. And I'm like, and they just started moving towards GPS systems. I'm like, okay, on this traffic light, you install this, how long does it take? 2 cops a week, couple of days with some people stopping the traffic. I said, okay. I took the software and I containerized it and put it on Amazon. I took the on-prem stuff they had, put it on Amazon. And now we have an orchestration framework where we model each intersection in Amazon and orchestrated the lights and all that good stuff. And then I said, okay, if you sell this to a city with 300 intersections, when do you get paid? After we install everything. I'm like, okay, good. So there's something I'm going to design called priority control as a service because you're selling devices. So I moved all that stuff and said, okay, we're going to do this as a service. We're going to get the intersections you want, model it, put it simulated up there, deploy our stuff, and we hit go as soon as the contract's signed and the revenue recognition is immediate. Right? So I have a tendency to like on an exec, and one reason I moved as well, for the opportunity to report to a board of directors. At AT&T, I was a senior technical director. And I looked up one day and I said, how far am I to CEO? I was like 5 levels. I was like, and these guys are like this something. I was like, yeah,
don't have time for
nah, I'm out. So I was like, okay, I'm out. So I started working. AT&T has 250,000 employees at the time, right? And I'm like 5 rungs down from the CEO. I was like, nah, we're not doing that. So I moved to a company. They probably had like 200 people, but now I'm at the executive level reporting to the board of directors, and I learned a lot. The company went through private equity funding, how PEs evaluate companies, what playbooks You come in, you have cash flow problems, you push out accounts payable, pull in the receivables. So I learned a lot there and a lot reporting to our board. And I remember the CEO at the time, I think something had happened, and he asked about the revenue and our bonus is dependent on top line revenue. And I was like, but my compensation to be effect, he's like, that's how it goes. I was like, damn. So now I'm in everyone's business. Marketing. Okay, here's marketing tech. You need to do right? Accounting. Here's the sort of, so I'm now responsible for the overall performance of the entire organization as an executive, not just my function.
It's a very different mindset.
Yeah. And after that, I moved to Austin at the beginning of the pandemic. It's a ed tech company. They have agents running on 20 million Chromebooks. Did some stuff there, built an analytics platform. We won 2 awards for the Smart City platform. We won 2 awards in Lightspeed Systems for ed tech across 20 million devices, doing some LLM stuff as well. And then one day I text Davey and I said, man, I think I'm done here. He says, come to Kansas City.
And no, all right. Man, you just said 3 things I want to... a terrible time to be in Austin would be the pandemic. Austin's a cool city, but I could not imagine I landed in Austin during the pandemic.
Knowing 2 people.
Yeah, that would have been...
And no one else.
Yeah. So you knew Davion. When did you meet Davion?
So
you guys old Sprint?
No.
All right.
In 2015, a journalist from Trinidad wrote an article about me because at the time I had built relationships with incubators and I was working with the government to try and get startups into Silicon Valley. The government kind of dropped the ball. Davion saw the article and hit me up on Facebook Messenger. Hey man, I'm from Trinidad too, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, hey, what's up? So we always chatted. And then with Smart Cities, there was a Smart City corridor in Kansas City. So one year we came to the conference and I hit him up and said, hey man, I'm in Kansas City. He's like, come to the office. And I came to the office and we just continue hitting on. And so from time to time, he'd be like, hey man, how do we do this? We're collecting high-speed data. And so I just lean in with his team and help them over the years.
Okay. All right.
You know, even today,
some things are starting to click in my mind about the conversations I've had previously now. All right. Make a lot of sense. That's interesting. I wonder, I'm trying to think if you and I had ever crossed paths because our team was responsible for some of the Smart City Corridor work when I was at Sprint, and then at Pinside Media, we were responsible for some of that. So interesting. All right, so Davion says, all right, come to Kansas City.
Yeah.
So is this you came to Kansas City without a job, or did you land here did you get hooked up with a job before?
He started texting Toby Rush.
All right.
Right? He's like, yo, this guy, he's blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, all right. Send him a text. Davion text him, text me back, kind of 3-way thing. I said, all right, I'll come next week. I showed up.
Toby was at Smart Warehousing at the time. Had just taken over Smart Warehousing.
Yeah.
All right.
Right. And I don't work for CEOs or companies where I can't direct the vision of the organization. So I came to interview him. All right. And we sat, we talked, interviewed with the rest of the team. And any day he's like, yo, I'd like to make an offer. I'm like, all right, I'll think about it. Cool. And that was it.
Okay. So you landed in Kansas City. So this would be 21?
21, yeah. 21.
Okay. So you landed in Kansas City in 21. At what point in the Smart Warehousing journey, because I think that was a short journey for Toby.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm guessing probably a short journey for you.
Nope.
Okay. How long were you there?
What year are we in? 24,
yeah.
23?
Okay.
Yeah, December 22.
At what point, so let's go to Heft. Let's talk about what you're doing now. When did you identify, all right, so let's say you said, what is Heft IQ?
Sure.
What do you guys do?
Sure. So we do analytics, right? And I'll qualify that. Most companies are not good with data, and I came from a big data world. Most companies are not good at anything machine learning, data science related as well. And today, the technology to do any of that work within the existing enterprises are first generation tools and with people with first generation skill sets. So what we do, and and what we do, we have an analytics platform, and how we go into the market changes over time. But today we deploy AI agents into spaces that is able to reason and create deeper insights and auto-generate dashboards without the help of data analysts.
So you and I were talking previously about, if you're familiar with big data, if you're familiar with big data companies and some of the challenges that enterprise or business has, it's actually turning those into insights.
Yeah.
Because data has no value until you can get it processed enough to be able to answer questions.
Yes.
And many times those questions need to be answered in the form of, we'll just say it, and it's like a lot of people have to read picture books, right? Pictures.
Yes.
So the way you were describing before we got up here, when we first got up here, before we turned these mics on, we were talking about this being kind of the Tableau killer.
Yes.
No longer a need to have those visualization tools because your LLM agents are actually doing that on the fly.
Yes.
Based on the data sets that they're interacting.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Now, when you started, you were focused on a sector, a segment.
Yes.
That has changed.
Yes, it's changed slightly.
Okay, but is that still a core?
A very core.
Because that seems like especially in this market.
Yes, it's huge. And I'll tell you why.
And that is logistics. That is supply chain logistics.
Supply chain logistics. Because I've been in that space and built relationships, I have distribution. I think distribution is going to be what software engineering was. Software engineering, the barriers to software engineering has gone down with AI and LLMs. So your competitive advantage is velocity and your go-to-market, right? So we don't sell to individual companies. We use channel partners to sell into their user base.
One-to-one to many.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then supply chain and logistics, because I have those relationships, is quick wins. However, we're now fielding inquiries and from specific people who own distribution channels around tertiary education, colleges, as well as legal. And I had a conversation today about maritime.
Now, let me ask you though, as an early stage company, oftentimes you hear the advice to you see the adjacencies, you see the opportunities, you see being able to jump markets, but oftentimes, as a mentor, as someone who's worked with startups in many markets, you want your early stage company stay focused.
Yes.
Let's stay focused. Let's get some traction. Let's build some things out first. How do you think about that in kind of the way you're thinking? So, you've gone from supply chain logistics, legal. I've heard you starting to mention other sectors.
Yes.
Maritime's a jump.
Yes.
Are you worried?
No.
Okay.
I'll tell you why.
Okay, yeah.
Most times startups are focused or hyper-focused on a specific sector, and like Visa's very niche and focused. And that is great. But what I'm trying to build is a billion-scale company. And to build a billion-scale company, you need to build a platform. And the platform has to have capabilities, right? I'll give you an example. At AT&T Big Data, we collected 5 petabytes of data a day in 2015. Petabytes per day, right? And we built several foundational platforms on top of that allowed us to scale different products on top of that. So we had to spend some time building the foundational layer. And I'll give you an example. We had to build a location system. We got location from Foursquare, location from mobile devices. Your lat and long may have 6 decimal places, some 8. We had to clean and standardize the location formats to be used across multiple products. Consumer intelligence platform, CIP. We had to structure the data from all these 168 data sources and structure it in a way so that we leverage across multiple products. So the way we've built our platform, to get to another vertical, we already have all the infrastructure built out. And so what we're deploying today is a lot of the AI agents into the spaces. One, with someone who has the distribution, but understanding the spaces is things we understand in the space, right? So we're building a billion-scale company, which takes a different strategy of getting its tentacles in and distribution, Because what's going to happen is some of the players within the space is going to wake up, right? And then the velocity, the rate at which we build things into the space is super fast.
Tried to explain this to when we ran Pensight, we had the very same mentality. We were told by executives who were from a traditional telecom business, selling phones to customer segments, that, you have to focus on a customer segment and get good with a customer segment. And we were a platform company. And so we weren't like, that's why we spun out, because we weren't like the traditional company. And our focus was this way,
Yes.
not this way.
Yes.
Because when you go this way and your focus is this way, when they start hopping on, it's just another stop in the, you're like a train and it's just another stop at another station.
Yeah, you have to do like the T shape too to get the early traction in. And then and one thing we also do in that supply chain space, and a lot of spaces, it's deployments. In the space, they call it integrations. I hate that. You charge integration fee. I hate that. Right? So we've adopted what is called a PLG model, product-led growth, a PLG model. So for example, today, one of our customers, they can get turned on in 5 minutes. And there's no fees. They're like, what are you talking about? Right? We're really planning for a ProMat conference next March, what they're going to look like. And I'm already like, okay, someone visits the booth, they're going to call the IT team, hey, give me an API key. They put it in and start asking questions. Ask away right there. Right? So the ease of deployment, just like social media platforms do, PLG motion, and then T-shape, getting deep into the space. Channel partners is so important. So we get into the space. I told one of my sales guys today, stop having so many meetings. He's going to meet a potential customer in this one college, the fourth time. I said, no more meetings. First meeting, you show up. What is the systems you use? Do you have an API? Can I get a CSV sample file? And the next meeting, you show up with a POC next week. Stop the meetings. Because what I've discovered is most executives suffer from an imagination gap. They don't read as much, so they don't know what is possible. And so it almost take convincing. Like when I left San Francisco and went to Minneapolis, I inherited this MVP analytics product. And I deep dive with the engineering. I
think the Royals game just started. I'm not sure.
So I deep dive with the engineering team, got the product up, got to market, got it out. We won an award after 3 months of work, right? And I told them, and accepting this stuff, I said the only difference is in Silicon Valley, we're ruthless, right? And we believe. So what happens is if I say, I'm going to build a flying bicycle, most people in the Midwest going to be like, a flying bicycle? How's that going to work? That's not going to work. In San Francisco, they'll be like, all right, so you wanna meet up every Saturday? We could go to Parlor and hack on the thing, or that's the only difference. Believe.
Yeah.
Right? And so when I got to Minneapolis, there was a thing called the Show Me State. Right? The first thing I did was destroyed all the cubicles. I came in the first day, I said, what do you want? Free MacBooks, whatever you want, you're gonna get. Because they just paid a recruiter $250,000 for me. So whatever I ask for, I have a window you're going to get. What do you all want? And they're like, wow. And I was like, okay. I said, I only want one thing. The cubicles, they're gone. Because I can't innovate with people sitting in cubicles.
Thank you.
Open office.
Thank you.
You're gone. And one of the engineers, Friday, I said,
now, why do you think that is? Why do you think that,
there's no eavesdropping. You need to be able to eavesdrop. When someone says, hey, so this JavaScript function here, I don't really understand. So I'm like, oh, you know what? Yeah, what's kind of working on? That's what occurs. And without that, you're dead in the water. I'm going to send you an email from my cubicle. Hey, Kevin. And then you're going to see it and send it after lunch and we're going to play that ping pong.
But without the eavesdropping, I wouldn't even know to send you that email and send you that question because you're not in my linear thought of how I'm going to solve this problem.
Yes.
Because there's adjacency.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they tried, HR was like, hey, top architect say he's going to quit if the office is open. I said, okay, let's write a job description. She's like, what are you talking about? You're not going to threaten me. If you want to leave, you can leave.
Yeah. So I'm fascinated because you talk about being a technologist as early on.
Yeah.
And you've been a technologist your whole career.
Yeah.
But I've been fascinated because your ability to tie the technology to to a business acumen. I'm trying to figure out where you picked up the business acumen.
Well, I mean,
And is it just from consuming is it from the reading? Is it just
I think all of it.
okay? That's on you. You understand that that's not like most technologists sometimes don't have the business acumen. They think of things in the terms of
2007, right? I saved up money to go do an MBA. And I looked at this money, $80,000, and I'm like, do I spend this money? At the time, I think I was making like $168,000 a year as an engineer. And I'm like, do I spend this money, go to school, come back out, and get hired as a manager at 125 in Telecom? No income for the 2 years and spend the savings I have. You know what? All right. And I just went to bought the books. I bought the books and because I'm like, I'm paying you for you to tell me what book to read, give me some homework to do. I can do that. I'm very disciplined. I can do that on my own.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was able to like power up very quickly. And then being good with people and understanding advocates within the organization. It's super easy for me to build those type of relationships to move the needle.
Yeah. That's fascinating. And I get it. I want to, Heft.
Yeah.
Where do you see the company in 3 years? What do you want to be true?
IPO.
Okay. So why exit? Let's go IPO. Let's build this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to IPO. I already have my outfit picked out already. No joke.
I hope I'm there, man. I hope I'm there. Yeah, you ring that bell. I hope I'm there.
Yeah, I'm going to bring my own bell.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, I already have my outfit picked out and everything.
Something tells me this is going to happen. Kansas City. So you've been in Kansas City now 3 years.
Yeah.
3 years. What is your impression of the ecosystem? Because you've been in ecosystems, you've kind of sensed ecosystems. You understand systems.
Yes.
What's your sense of the ecosystem here in Kansas City as a high growth entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur?
It's very difficult.
Why? What makes it difficult?
You all have real lives. Like you all have families and kids and things to do. In Silicon Valley, no one goes home right after work. Right? That was a cultural shock for me in Minneapolis. When I came, one guy, an intern, hey, can I move to Fargo? I just got engaged. I'm like, but you can't, like, what? And then people going home. I'm like, what? It was weird, right? To see people like 27 years old, married, 2 kids. I'm like, what? Like, it was weird, right? And life is just slower, just like the Caribbean. People are comfortable. They go home, they turn on the news, they watch movies.
You use the word there, comfortable.
Yeah.
I've heard that used differently from people I know from Silicon Valley that have experienced flyover entrepreneurship. And they call it a complacency. There's that comfort turns into something.
It can.
Yeah. But they talk about this in the sense of the ecosystem becoming complacent because of that comfort.
Yeah, there's that, and I'll tell you some. You have to be dedicated to the region you're in, and understand that when one startup doesn't work, the talent is still there. You should be able to plug them into another company who's trying to build something. And that is not happening. What's happening? They're leaving these companies to die and figure out the stuff. There's no reason why an injection of a $20,000 check could help someone just get over the hump for 1 or 2 months, right? To me, the grants that we got, Launch KC, was huge for us. EDC was huge for us. Way more than the angel and VC community, which is crazy to me, right? And it's a lack of dedication to the region. It's like, I have money and whatever, I don't know what you're doing. We came from farms, we moved here and whatever. Life is slow, we good, right? But I think that's going to come back and bite people because their kids have gone to school and said, I don't want the farm life, going to corporate. And those companies are going to get disrupted and they're going to be back, right? So for me, everywhere I've lived, I've tried to put back into the ecosystem because I understand the value of putting back. It's sort of no value to me to die. You know, my mom growing up told us, how do you get more from God? And she said, when he gives you, you empty it and you come back and get more. And we're like, oh. So as kids, like, that's what we do, right? You don't take your full cup and hold your corner. I'm like, I have a full cup. There's nothing else coming, right? So for me, the ecosystem need dedication from everyone in the ecosystem. What you're all doing here is amazing. This occurs every single day in multiple locations in San Francisco, right? I met the guys from Uber in 2011. They're like, we're not a ride-sharing company. We're a data science company. Matching demand and supply. Here's all your forecasting. Then the guys from ESRI came in with GeoMaps and they were struggling on the back end. I said, hey, do you know about Elasticsearch? This 2011. Oh, that's it. Oh, let's meet for coffee. So I do 4 coffee meetings a day. Every day. And I was not a coffee drinker, right? I promised my dad I would drink coffee. But every single day, and there's a certain level of urgency and a certain level of when one succeed, we all succeed, right? I met the founder of Farmville and Cityville for breakfast. He ordered cornflakes and milk with strawberries. A 24-year-old kid sold the company to Zinger. Like, oh man, like,
yeah.
The directors of engineering at Pivotal Labs, they saved Twitter. This guy was like 24 years old. I'm like, that. So,
but they didn't just march off. They didn't just take that money and march off. They turned right back around.
In the ecosystem, if you think about the PayPal mafia, right? Sam Altman, Peter Thiel, they spin out billionaires and millionaires and still.
Yep.
So when you have an idea, Kevin, you're like, oh my God, what do you need? What do you need? Talent? We have talent, right? But that is not happening here. They're leaving people up to their own devices, and it's not a good thing. I literally feel like I'm on an island in Kansas City. I tell people, I'm not from here, right? I have VCs like, what do you mean like a LLM and an agent? Like, why you don't know that? The VCs can speak the speak.
So this leads me to, and we're unfortunate. I mean, I could sit here and do this for a while with you. Now I have this burning question inside me about you personally of, are you going to be a guy who rings the bell and then turns around here, or is Kansas City not for you?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
I have another company, Lifelong Learning Labs. There's corporate Gen AI training and stuff. And I'm growing into another McKinsey right from here. So I'm 2 companies now.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't know. But what I know is that I don't think the investors and the angels here are trying to do anything. If I say make a list of the top 10 angels in KC, it's a struggle to name the 10. If you say, how many checks have they written into the ecosystem, right? We all will win if we all put in the work, right? So for me, I don't know yet. I'm doing it from here. The things I'm doing, the things I'm building, is not so much KC derivative, except the market and the connections. It's very Silicon Valley in KC. And hopefully, IPO, I can hand it off to another CEO and put in some work here on building pipelines of talent. Because I'm trying to do the same thing with the CEO levels. I'm part of Vistage, 48,000 CEOs. And I do a lot of Gen AI training for the CEOs because that's where a lot of the problem is. The problem is the executive teams. They actually hold back the organizations and people in the organizations from progressing because they're procrastinating based on this imagination gap. So unless the ecosystem gets the people within the organizations together, right? I spoke to Chris. I said, Chris, Demo day, people should be demoing. I don't want a demo of a PowerPoint.
Right.
I want to see a demo of the thing with it. Yeah, let me see the thing feeling, and this is what we're trying to do, and this tech has this capability. Got it. That's how we build the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Being comfortable saying we try this, and this is what happens.
Yeah, that's the agile culture of, our teams used to get up and demo what they'd been working on. Sometimes it wouldn't work, but then they would get feedback from the other teams. Yeah. So my hope is that I think if we are going to change the things that you're talking about, it's multiple generations if it goes in a traditional path, unless we have game changers that understand and are willing to change it and willing to step in and do it. So my hope is that we give you a reason, or you find a reason to be a catalyst for change here, because I think the potential in Kansas City, I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe this.
Right.
I think the potential in Kansas City is tremendous, but we need those game changers. We need those people who understand what it's going to take to change that, and can lead the way, because I think if they lead the way, there are people with money. You can't name those angels, because for some reason it's better to be rich and anonymous in this city than it is to be rich and known. And there's gatekeepers and all these things, and that you don't find that in San Francisco. The access is crazy. The ability, you run into people that you read about sitting next to you in the coffee shop, and they'll talk to you. And
the amount of the people I've met, it's crazy.
It's a crazy force multiplier effect, and we need people that understand that and are going to help us change it. So my hope is that you are wildly successful here, and for those reasons that you stay and you help those people, that ecosystem continue to be successful. And I know I'm pitching you a little bit.
This is it's a good thing. It's a wish of mine as well, right? There's a reality component, but it's a wish of mine. That's why I put again the work on the corporate side as well, because I think like this year we're building multi-agent systems. The next year autonomous multi-agent. At that point, the rate of displacement of jobs is going to accelerate next year, and so because who knows what the world going to look like in 2 years?
Yeah.
Right. So for me, I went through a whole guilt phase last year. April was very bad. It was terrible because I understood what was going to happen, and come next year is going to be really bad because our agent could already do a bunch of things.
It just changes, opens new opportunities, man. Our history has always been these technologies. What they displace, they open doors for multiples, though.
Yeah, but that period is the scary period.
Yeah. I think those things will happen as fast too. I think there's got to be people that have the ingenuity and the desire to find those opportunities and turn those up for people to have access to. And I think people like you understand that and can make it happen. Herc, we're out of time, man. Like I said, I could keep going. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's fascinating. I think we're blessed to have you here in Kansas City building what you're building.
Appreciate it.
I think I'm anxious to see, kind of the journey continue. And, I hope you ring the bell sooner than 3 years, man.
Yeah, I'm a voyeur. I'm a voyeur to my own journey too, funny enough. Right. So sometimes I'm on the outside looking in, I'm like, I just get up every day excited. Right?
Yeah.
So, but
that keeps you going though. Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. KC has been good to me. I've met a lot of people from everywhere. It's a great city, and it's a growing city.
It's funny because that's what people say about Kansas City is it's hard to get people here, but once you get them here, it's hard to get them to leave because they realize what it is. And I think if more talent knew that with the lifestyle, quality of life, the opportunity, the runway, if you're starting a company is so much different than it is on either coast.
Yeah.
So help us bring more people here.
All right.
That's the bet, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to the Disruption Lab podcast, brought to you by the Keystone Innovation District and recorded live at Keystone Sessions. I am your host, Kevin McGinnis, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Be sure to tune in next Thursday for more insights from entrepreneurs, innovators, and industry disruptors. Until then, keep challenging the norm and making waves.